You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A. My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at M.A.Y.A.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, the podcast that I like to say looks at embracing salient topics from a fresh and forward-thinking perspective. Now, mind you, that is the assessment of myself. So if it seems a little embellished, it might be a little fair. But I feel like that's the best version of me, so I'm going to go with that. But of course, the focus of the podcast is to pull back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in life, and we don't get to our best version because of that. And everything about M.A.Y.A is daily living. And this episode is so tied into that. So as I always say, if you are a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. Buckle up for safety. Not because it's not a safe ride with me, but because you might hit some bumpy spots. Let's just say in an episode, something resonates with you. You know, I want to make sure that you're in a safe place. So I always say buckle up for safety. Of course, if you are a returning listener or viewer, then you know what we do here. You know what it's all about. So of course, rule one with the podcast is that you always work at your own pace. So it doesn't matter if you're back on episode 20, if you're on episode 15, it doesn't matter. You listen to them as they come along. And you know, something else is if it takes you longer to get through an episode, that's okay too. But if you're here today because you just like to stay current and with things, I appreciate you tuning in one way or the other. So, of course, got to do little housekeeping things. You can always listen to episodes of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, at M.A.Y.A.com. Remember, there's always podcast resources that pretty much support every single episode. So some additional things for you to read so you can dig a little deeper into the topic of the show. Of course, you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. In fact, call to action right now. Make sure you subscribe to M.A.Y.A when you actually end watching this particular episode. Maybe you're watching it this way. Great. Of course, episodes are always available in different podcast platforms. You can pick your favorite. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio. I'm actually on Spotify too, and I'm now available on Amazon Audibles. Just search M.A.Y.A, M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and boom, you can see all the podcasts there as well. I would hope by now that you have gotten social with me, which means you are following me on Instagram and Twitter at M.A.Y.A_Akai. And of course, on Facebook, M.A.Y.A Akai Presents. That's all the ways that you can get connected to the show, get involved, all that wonderful stuff. And hopefully you're doing it. So before we actually jump into episode 27, creating that everyday version of you, we're going to first make sure we welcome onto the show our musical muse, Miriam McQueen.
Hi.
Hello.
Good to be back.
Yes, and I feel like this is like a really exciting episode because of what you'll be sharing with the listeners today.
I have a new single out called Heart of Gold, and it's on all streaming platforms. I'm really excited. So far, all of the feedback that I've gotten has been amazing and just full of love. Oh my gosh, look at that. Ooh, cover art.
There is the all,
Yes.
very sultry, dressed up, professional, Miriam McQueen right there.
Blazer, shirtless underneath.
I figure I would throw you for a curveball.
Yes.
And throw that
sometimes I look like that, but most of the time I look like this, guys.
The two sides of Miriam McQueen.
Yeah, exactly. I am both. And beautiful both ways too.
Exactly. So who gets dressed up every day all the time? I'm never going to say to a person, if you get dressed up to go to the grocery store, if that makes you feel good, then so be it. Yeah. The only rules I have about not going out in public is I will not wear pajama pants.
I so will.
I don't wear shower caps and stuff like that anyways. So I will always at least be presentable, but I'm never going to be glammed up. You're never going to catch me glammed up going to the grocery store, probably not even to the mall unless I'm going somewhere once I leave there.
Okay. See, I'm the opposite. I don't care. Like when I'm out, I'm just whatever I'm wearing. If I'm comfortable, I'm fine. I don't really have pajama pants, but like sweatpants, sweatshirts, just like baggy stuff.
You might migrate to getting like little pajama sets.
Yeah.
To like pajama pants.
I love pajama sets. I don't wear them, I guess.
I do, and it's usually just around the house. Like if I'm doing nothing around the house, put your pajamas back on. But
yeah.
lounge wear, so to speak.
Yes.
It's like more like loungewear. So, but it's still nothing fabulous. Like, I'm not going to be sitting like in a silk gown and, match.
And like,
The tomboy in me will never probably ever subscribe to that. I'm just going to admit it.
yeah,
There's a fine line for me. So,
not home.
well,
No,
I
not at
can't
home.
wait to talk more about the new single that was recently released, Heart of Gold, on the back end of the show and get some more insight and inspiration and all that good stuff from you.
Mhm.
All right. We'll see you then. All right, everybody. That is Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A musical muse. Make sure you follow Miriam at Miriam McQueen, just like it is. You can find her on, iTunes, YouTube. Go to miriammcqueen.com. It's all right there. The thing I love about her handles, unlike some people, and even I'm a little guilty, is consistent and easy to find. So you can't beat that. So make sure you go check out and make sure you're back on the back end of the show. Usually about, when there's like 10 minutes left in the show, she comes back on, not debuts a song, but usually sings a song that correlates with the theme. But this show, we're actually debuting her new single that just got released. So I'm super excited about that. So make sure you're there. All right. So we've done our housekeeping things. What do we always do before we jump into our first, talking about the episode? We always say what? It's toolbox time. That never changes. And hopefully by now, it's already something that's ingrained in your mind that you're doing on a daily basis. So what is toolbox time? When we take out our emotional intelligence, because it's sitting at the table with us. And of course, a refresher, your emotional intelligence, the EI, refers to your ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions. It is the kind of thing that if you have to have anything in your driver's seat, you want your emotional intelligence there, because it's the thing that can help you to navigate rough waters, calm waters, whatever it might be. It's the best thing that when you're working on that best version of yourself, you want to make sure that you really begin to really settle into using your emotional intelligence. So before we get into the episode 2, remember, hopefully by now, you've got your beverage of choice. For me, I am doing a peach citrus tea. I'm into this whole Tivana thing, as well as I'm double fisting today. I'm also drinking a glass of water as well. I'm trying to hydrate and be healthy. So whatever it is, remember, we have about an hour where we get together, because this is all about you time. This is strictly about you and nobody else. And, a lot of times people are reluctant to carve out time for themselves. Well, hopefully by now, if you've been tuning into M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, you've gotten comfortable with the idea that it's okay to take this one time a week for 60 minutes and to focus on you. It's not a lot to ask, but what we do here, you can use it throughout the entirety of the week as you're working on that best version of you, or whatever you're doing. You term it however you want to. The reason I decided, hello to everybody who's tuned in, Roburn, who's always there. Thank you. He always tunes in and shares my podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I always encourage people, please share as well, because maybe it doesn't strike you, or it doesn't resonate with you, but you never know. You might share this on your page and somebody else might say, I've been really struggling with this. So hello, Nick Paul, afternoon to you as well. Thank you for tuning in. So it's really key to know that carving time out for yourself is a big part of what's important to getting to the best version of you. And one of the reasons that I wanted to kind of, in a way, I feel like I've sort of talked about this, or this conversation has been a thread through almost every podcast, but I felt like my podcast really come from a point that's personal. So when I experience something, I'm like, I can't be the only person who feels this way, but I kind of feel like they just kind of flow in what we're talking about. So I don't know if that's just the way that life is working for me right now, but I'm a very empathic person. I feel very deeply when other people feel their pain, their suffering, their issues. And so for me, I'm always like, when I feel something, I'm very sensitive to it, which is probably not necessarily the strongest characteristic of me being an Aquarian. Yes, my birthday is actually on February the 6th. Moving on into the world, hitting closer to that big 50. Not quite yet, but I'm getting there. So this is why, for me, I feel like this year is something that I really, really want to focus on getting to that best version of me. So without further ado, let's jump into episode 27, the everyday work of creating the best version of you. The reason I decided to revisit this conversation was because I felt like when I was talking about it in past episodes, I felt like it had more of a lofty kind of connotation to it. Thinking of somewhere down that road is that best version of you. And I said, maybe people aren't reading between the lines that the best version of you is actually an everyday process. It's a cumulative experience. And I wanted to make sure that that was understood, because for me, I feel like my everyday work is rigorous, but I've learned a lot from it. And I feel like every day I'm getting better at something about myself emotionally, mentally, even financially. I've just grown, I'd say in the last 6 months, just from really buckling down and focusing on doing things better on a daily basis. So I wanted to kind of bring this conversation back center because I didn't want it to be like this general concept of the best version of you, when really it's about the everyday best version of you builds to that long-term sustainability or that long-term goal of really being that person that you seek to be. And this is why I revisited it. So let's talk about, what does the best version of you entail? Okay. Hopefully by now, everybody could answer this question and get it right. But newsflash, just in case you can't, there's this great article on keepingitmindful.com. It's a blogger named Kim who I follow, love her different kind of, she's about mindfulness. And so a lot of her posts are about, incorporating mindfulness into every aspect of your life. And I'm just going to steal what she said straight out because I felt like she nailed it when she said it. There's so much advice out there giving guidance on how to be productive, how to be happier, how to be more confident. But really, being the best version of you is the foremost thing to discover in your journey of personal growth. So ultimately, here it goes. It's a newsflash. It's simple. It's about how to be productive, how to be happy, and how to be competent and confident. Because so many times we look outside of ourselves for the answers when everything comes from within. And when you find a way to strike that balance within, the way that it radiates out, you end up achieving your goals. And people struggle with this because guess what? Looking in the mirror and being accountable and honest with yourself about what you're struggling with is often the hardest thing to do. And let's be honest, when you have other variables outside of you that really kind of challenge you on what you're trying to achieve, it makes that much more harder of a task getting to the best version of you. So let's jump into our first real talk time, okay? There's those moments where I feel like I'm about to say something a little salient. So if you happen to have your pen and paper with you might jot this down. That means I might throw a couple things out there I want you to think about. Not overthink it, but just put it into perspective as you reflect on how you can get to that best version of yourself on a daily basis. So here's our real talk time. The best version of you is a daily project that you should be building on your success and failures. Most people refuse to actually carve out time for themselves because they legitimately don't think that that's important to do, because we let daily life kind of just absolutely take over how we navigate through it. So whether it's, I got to get up on time to work out, I got to get up on time to get to work, and working out is for you. So that's not a bad thing. Got to get to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. But for some reason, people seem to not want to either carve out the time to focus on themselves, or they feel guilty if they do because perhaps they're taking time away from someone else or something else that they've assigned more value to, more value than themselves. Think about that for a minute. Assigning more value to something or someone else than you assign to yourself, which means being productive, being happier, being confident altogether. Okay, before we move any forward with this, I think it's fair when I tell my new listeners to buckle up for safety. Returning users, you know exactly what's going on. But I think out of fairness, I'm going to throw up a warning sign, because this is what Real Talk Time is legitimately about. It's about, hey, this is where we might have to, actually we're going to crack some eggs. It's okay, because we're making something amazing with the eggs that we're cracking. So now that I was fair and I gave you a warning on this, let's dive into this a little bit deeper. The warning is simply this. Are you subjugating or surrendering to situations or people that are undermining you being productive, happier, or confident? Think about that. Are you subjugating, which means are you willingly surrendering yourself to situations or people that are undermining you being productive, happier, or confident? Understand this in the real talk. You determine what's going to be productive to you, what it means. You determine what it means to be happy, and you determine what makes you feel confident. Now, when you're determining these things, here's what you kind of have to keep into perspective. You need to know, how have you been, or how do you define being unproductive, or which means what areas are you focusing in? Be really specific when you're working on the best version of yourself. Is your can I talk today? Is your unproductiveness tied to something work related? Do you feel unproductive in relationships, health, finances, spirituality? You have to determine which of these domains, so to speak, is the point of contention for you. that you're prioritizing the impact on it. Because see, you can't walk through this just randomly without paying attention to what really matters. So in those domains, whether it's work, personal, spiritual, financial health, whatever the case may be, you have to figure out, where do you feel unproductive? And here's the thing, it might be in more than one area. And that's okay too. Because when you're working towards the best version of yourself, it's about that self-assessment and being reflective to figure out, I don't feel productive. But why don't I feel productive? And when you ask ourselves, why don't you feel productive? Because remember, productivity, and this is key, and happiness are really tied together. So let's dial this back just a little bit in the conversation, because I want to make sure that we keep everything respectively in focus. The things that should jump out at you are things that are not necessarily long-term goals, but things that are more importantly day-to-day observations. These are the things, in working towards the best version of yourself, I want you to start to notice and to start making adjustments accordingly. So for instance, if you are that person that is a chronic complainer about your job, I hate my job, I don't want to do this anymore, this doesn't make me happy. Okay, here's the observation that you've already noticed from a day-to-day basis. 1, you are not happy with your job, okay? The question is, why are you not happy with your job? And some people do just enough of their job to not get fired. That's not being productive. And that's definitely not working towards the best version of yourself. So the best version of you is a daily project that you have to be building on your success and your failures. So remember, that warning is still on the screen for a reason, because I need for people to wrap their minds around this. Are you subjugating or surrendering to situations or people that are undermining you being able to be productive, happier, or confident? And most of the times, we can identify the things that make us unproductive, that make us unhappy, and definitely make us waver in our confidence. The challenge is willing to do something about it. So if you find you are continually making exceptions and making space emotionally for things that are not healthy or productive, if you are making space, mentally for things that are not healthy, if you are making space for things that are putting you in financial peril, if you are making space for things that are jeopardizing your health, then you are choosing to surrender to those things, which clearly are compromising you getting to the best version of yourself. And that's one of the things I really want people to keep in front of them. So ask yourself these questions when you talk about getting to the best version of yourself on a daily basis. How much do you personally value your happiness? Do you put other people or things first? And this conversation comes up frequently because often it is easier to be the champion for someone else than it is to be the champion for yourself. Because guess what that means? If you're a champion for someone else and they're successful, then you feel great about what they've achieved. And you don't maybe always feel 100% guilty if they fail, even though some people do. They feel like they have to be someone's savior when they can't be their own savior half the time. But when you truly invest in you, you now become responsible for your success as much as your failures. And most people love success, but they don't know what to do with failure. And that would be another podcast, how to process and make failure productive, because it does have a meaning and can be used to your advantage, only if you know what to do with it. So ask yourself that question again. How much do you personally value your happiness? Do you put other people or things first? So things might be at work. You put things ahead of, I don't want to do this, but I take the responsibility on because nobody else will do it. But I'm overworked because I keep taking on other burdens that I should not. So that's just one perspective of how you can think about things. Okay, the next question that I want you to ask yourself is, how much do you personally value happiness? We already talked about them, sorry. Second question. Do you really feel that, how can I say this, that are you realistic about how others treat and value and meet your needs? That would be the second question I would ask you to really look into, is that besides focusing on other people, and besides really focusing on what their happiness is, are you realistic about how others treat and value and meet your needs? Okay, here's where we jump into real talk time too. And this is as we get a little deeper into the podcast where it gets a little bit more personal for me, because I'm going to share an experience and I'm going to say something that I think really might be a little like, wow, okay, now you're saying something that I really hadn't thought about. This is one where this podcast for me, this is the question, or this is the situation where it resonated for me. Do you frequently find you're sitting on the emotional fence and it will not help you to become the best version of yourself? So what is that emotional fence? An emotional fence, and I'm going to give you an example, a personal example for me, so you can kind of work it into something for you. You could be in a relationship with someone, and generally you're happy. Things are good. You feel like you're connected, whatever the case may be. But on the flip side, there are clearly some things that really bother you. And those things that bother you might really start to add up. And then you get on this emotional fence of, am I being too sensitive? Am I reading into it too much? You start really creating this whole kind of demarcation point of your emotions, but you don't know what to do with them. So you sit on the emotional fence. Now, as you sit on the emotional fence, here was a thing that helped me to be able to get off my emotional fence in the situation that I was in. It doesn't get better than this graphic, and I really, really want you to think about this. You can't heal if you keep pretending you're not hurt, or something doesn't bother you, or something isn't wrong. I stole that from a friend, Johaisa de Jesus, who is a friend of like Sean and I in the Morning and What's Up Cuz with Coach Lance Irvin and Jason Palmer. She's into fit health, but fit health emotionally and mentally and physically. And she posted it on her page, like maybe earlier this week. And it's a thing that helped me to determine this podcast. Read that again. You can't heal, move forward, if you keep pretending you're not hurt or angry or confused. Because the question would be, where can the healing start if you keep pretending like everything is okay? And when you pretend everything is okay, that means you are on that emotional fence. So let me tell you specifically about the situation that put me on my emotional fence. In a relationship with somebody that I really care for, great person, great guy. A lot of things were right, but there were things that were happening in the relationship that were really starting to bother me that I felt were really impacting me. The issue I had was that it's not that I put his feelings before mine, but in the past, when I would attempt to have a very open and salient conversation about things that were bothering me, two things would happen. Either it would get brushed off, or it would turn into an argument. Because what I came to realize is that person was really taking it personal. And one of the things that I am big about when I have to have a really difficult conversation with somebody, and I'll say is, I might have to say something to you that you don't like. And it doesn't mean that this is exactly how things are happening, but this is how I'm feeling. And I feel like I need to say something to you about that. And it's interesting because I kept rolling that conversation at odd times with him to think that eventually when I could get to the point to talk about these things, and it had turned into a nice stacking of things, that he would understand that it wasn't a personal attack. It's how I felt about some things that were happening within the relationship, which might have been conscious or unconscious. And one of the things that's key about when you decide you're going to get off the emotional fence, the one thing I need you to do is this. Never make the assumption because of how you feel, you fully understand why things are happening the way that they are. That's not what getting off the emotional fence is. It's about approaching that person that's putting you in that odd position, discussing what's happening to get greater understanding for why it's happening, so then you can get off that emotional fence or whatever it is you need to figure out to do once you get some clear answers from them and you're not guessing, you're not assuming, because that's the worst thing you could do, especially in relatively healthy relationships where there's misunderstandings. That's where the misunderstanding comes from. You made me feel this way, so you must have meant this. Not necessarily. And that's something about the objectivity, because remember, subjectivity and objectivity is always sitting at the table along with emotional intelligence. And I want people to shift more towards being objective in situations like, this is how I feel. That doesn't mean this is exactly how things are. This is how I'm seeing it. Remember that podcast about perception and perspective? These are things that are all kind of working together. So what I just put on the screen, I'm going to put there one more time, because the thing for me, why it hit home, you can't heal if you keep pretending you're not hurt, angry, confused. The conversation was about with us and moving forward in our relationship. We felt we had bumped heads in some things. And we knew that we didn't want to bump heads. I mean, we knew sometimes we had different personality types, and maybe how I respond or express myself was different than how he did. And it could create friction at times because we're both very dominant personality types. So finding that middle ground was something we both agreed we wanted to do. When I saw that specific meme that Jahiza had put up on her page, I realized our last conversation, I had flat out lied to him. When I said, well, I'm like you. I mean, moving forward in 2021, I don't want to argue. I don't want to keep having the disagreements on things. I realize there's some things that kind of lend into this. I will tell you, dating in the pandemic is very difficult, but I'm with you. I don't want to keep, kind of having these moments where we really disagree. And I feel like when we disagree, it's very intense. It's more intense than it's ever been with anyone I've ever had. So I was like, wow, this is different. And I realized when I saw that meme that she had posted that I had flat out lied. Because there was no way I could move forward into 2021 and there not be another argument or another disagreement because I had not addressed the things that really bothered me. Some of them kind of hurt my feelings, which means there was no space for healing. So I was pretending that we could be okay. That's why that meme sat there with me. Now, mind you, when I lied to him, that was not my intention. My intention wasn't to tell him that just to make him feel okay. I really thought that, okay, we'll figure this out. We're going to work on this. But it wasn't until that I had that epiphany about, oh my God, I'm sitting on this emotional fence. And it's just as easy to hop off and be happy with him, or maybe have to hop off and not be as happy for a while without him. But if it gives me greater peace of mind, and if my emotions become a lot more stable and I feel more like I'm not being taken advantage of, or like I become like a kind of like a doormat in some kind of way, then it's worth it. So think about that. When you ride the emotional fence, you really put yourself in a difficult position. And that's what people don't get. No, I take that back. People do get when they ride the emotional fence. But this is when you put or you value other people's emotions over you, because I'm going to tell you something. That very same person could say, come to me and say, can I talk to you about something? And I'm like, of course, yes. Now, I kind of believe that it's the therapist in me. I'm that mental wellness advocate, that I'm going to approach things differently and be open to conversation. But there was no reciprocity in it. And eventually I started crafting conversations about being able to have a conversation, reciprocity, being open-minded. But I find there was an imbalance in tolerance, which means I had surrendered too much of my power within that relationship by allowing him to be able to express himself and be open. But that door didn't swing the other way. And that was the issue. And that's what put me on my emotional fence. And we often do this. We will put other people's wants, needs, and desires ahead of our own because often we care that much. We don't want conflict. Well, look where that puts you. It puts you on an emotional fence. And over time, the longer you sit on the fence, it's either going to turn into, oh, the grass is greener somewhere on the other side and you have enough and you walk away. Or if the relationship that you're dealing with, whether it's in friendships, romantic relationships, or even work dynamics, if it means something to you, you have to get off the fence and address the issues. And here's the thing. All you can do out of fairness is dress the conversation up right. That's all you can do. You can say, I need to talk to you about something. There's a high probability that you will not like it. It's not by any means putting you at blame. It is not an assault on your character, but this is just how I'm feeling. And I'm not sure if you're aware of it. And I don't know why these things are happening. But if I don't talk about this with you, one, it'll just keep adding up. The situation will keep compounding itself. And eventually we'll get to a point of no return, when all it took was a simple conversation to figure out if this is something that can be resolved so that moving forward, we're good. Because I'm the kind of person, once I resolve something, I'm not one to go back to it. That's not me. We resolve it, I move on, and everything's good. But I realized that how could I possibly, in good faith, believe that I could move forward without there not being another issue that's going to pop up, because you're going to do something else that you don't know that you're doing, and it's going to piss me off and it's going to piss you off. And this is why sitting and suffering in silence will never really do anything for you. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. So, real talk time. Get off your emotional fence. It's okay if you have to push the envelope with somebody because simply they don't get where they're putting you, whether it's your boss, whether it's the significant other, within friendships. You don't have to make yourself be subjected to making other people happy at the expense of your own happiness. Because one thing that's key to understand about those three things that kind of build into that best version of you on a daily basis, that being productive, being happy, and also being confident. Happy and productive really go hand in hand. Have you not noticed when you're productive, you're happy? And have you not noticed that when you're in a better state of emotional and mental state, you're happy, you tend to be more productive. They're very symbiotic. And guess what? When both of those things are striking a balance, you feel confident. You feel competent. And that's the key thing about the best version of you. Daily, work on identifying the things that take you off your square. And one of those things you have to ask yourself when you've been taken off your square, is it something that is out of my control? Be honest with yourself. If the situation that's happening is legitimately out of my control, then I have to figure out how to deal with this. Go back to the episode about reclaiming your power. Seriously, good episode to listen to. But if something is legitimately out of your control, then this is when you have to say, okay, at the end of the day, I am not the decision maker in this. This is something that I'm going to have to go along with. And usually this is very work related, that you have a boss and your company have said, this is what's expected. This is what you have to do. This is what we pay you to do. And even though you may not agree with it, you don't get a whole lot of room to argue with it because it's a corporation or it's a business and you have been hired to do that. So it's out of your control. But here is within your control. If you keep going every day and punching a clock in a place that makes you unhappy, now you've surrendered a part of your control that you need to work on and say, okay, is this really worth the aggravation that it causes me? I'm stressed. I'm just having issues with anxiety because of my job. You know how many people I hear say, for instance, that the minute they walk into their job, it's like they feel anxious until maybe things kind of settle down because of the situation that they're in, because they're so unhappy with their job. Why keep punching the clock that keeps punching you? And at the end of the day, if it's really about money, I don't know what to tell you, because if money is your driving force, if it's going to allow you to really stay unhappy, then that's a difficult situation. Then you have to figure out ways to deal with it. Then you got to ask yourself, is this a semi-control situation? So it might be within your workplace that you're dealing with a coworker, which means you may be equally yoked, so to speak. So it does give you the ability of how you can deal with the situation. Most people are afraid to step up, say something, especially when they feel like they're being taken advantage of, or like, hey, why is it that every time I'm at work, I get stuck doing this, but nobody else does? Or I notice this person happens to get different treatment than I do. Look, don't be afraid to say it. Like, I was just there, so can I be someplace else? Or don't be afraid to say it, but don't say it in a way that seems like you're not part of the team. Just kind of express how you feel. That's it. It's that simple. But most people are afraid to rock the boat, or the people who do sometimes rock the boat then get they get labeled as rebel rousers or they're aggressive. So remember, go back to that podcast about the art of communication. Learning how not to be passive aggressive, but you want to be assertive, because that's a skill set that will take you far in life. Being able to communicate properly what you're feeling without making other people feel marginalized. That is a skill set that takes work. But communication is something that most people just think, I'm going to say what I think, or I have a poor filter. Well, that can be the thing that costs you, thinking that you can just walk around filterless, unless you're an absolute millionaire. And guess what? That can still be an issue for you. Just because you're wealthy doesn't mean you get to have no filter. It can push back on you depending upon what it is that you do. The court of public opinion these days is rough goings. So it's about striking that balance that's key. So communication and honesty, you don't have to surrender yourself and subject yourself to things that are not fair because you think you have to. And if you're in that, I would say, toxic of a situation at work or in a relationship, you need to exit it. And yes, you may not be happy. At least with work, you can look for a new job. A relationship split is never easy, to be honest. It's often painful, especially if you really were emotionally invested in that person. But you'll get past it. You'll grow. You can move on. It's going to hurt a little bit, but what you will find is what on the other side of happiness. Like, I don't feel underappreciated, or I don't feel like I have to do this anymore. It's a challenge, but it's a change that's for the best for you emotionally and mentally, whether it's your job or a personal relationship. And then there's that type of control we talked about the surrendering piece. If you absolutely just always forfeit your control because it's the easy thing to do, then I'm going to tell you that's an issue. And one of the things that I have talked about with people is learning how to know when to be selfless and selfish. They are different things. And a lot of people really struggle with the idea of being selfish. Look, at times, if it's important that you do something that is going to be advantageous for you, now mind you, Being selfish doesn't mean you're going to do something that's going to really hurt or create massive collateral damage. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in relationships or even at work, being able to say, oh, no, I can't do that. Someone comes to you because they don't want to do it all the time. And you always say yes. You're like, no, I can't, and get back to your work. So then you don't get overwhelmed or left, or you're behind because you're doing somebody else's work. It's okay to be selfish as long as you are not creating harm for someone else. Now, if it creates harm, you need to think twice about it, because whatever you're about to do can't have that much value. And that's when being, selfish is important, because so often it's easier to be selfless, to do for others, and to often neglect ourselves. Because again, neglecting ourselves is something we've come accustomed to do. And notice when you meet people that are really 100% selfish, it's like a bell ringing. You're like, wow, that person is really selfish. And you notice it. But when a person strikes a balance, you tend to be like, okay, it might take you surprised, like, oh, wow, Maya normally says yes to that, but today she said no. Okay. It's about taking care of yourself. So let's talk about 10 ways to become the best version of yourself. Remember, I said the opening part of the show, I read a quote from keepingitmindful.com. Kim is a blogger that I follow that's really big about mindfulness, and this is one of her articles. It will be posted on M.A.Y.A. Go into the podcast resource section. Give it a read, because when we're talking about working towards that everyday version of yourself, everything, these 10 things, here's what you should take away from this. Here's a takeaway. You may not need to do all 10 of these things. There might be 3 things that you need to focus on that you feel like you're really deficient at, that compromises you being productive, happier, or confident. Maybe you kind of have a good command of some of these things, but there's 3 things you feel like, if I work on these 3 things, I think I'm going to be in a better place, especially daily. Because one of the things I want you to do is great, you're here with me for 60 minutes, but I want you at the end of your day, whether you're laying in bed, you're sitting down, I want you to stop and reflect on your day. What was your successes and what was your failures? The thing is, we focus so much on our failures, we tend to discount our successes, and that turns into a bigger issue. So my thing is, I want you to appreciate and celebrate those daily successes, because those are the things that help to elevate you. They become cumulative. You keep working towards them. And just like people make failure cumulative, I want you to start thinking about making your successes. So let's jump into these 10 things. I think it'll help you to put this in perspective. So one thing I want you to start thinking about is practice self-awareness. And this is something as simple as, if you're at work and you notice that you feel anxious. When do you feel anxious? Why do you feel anxious? Do you just feel anxious around certain people? Start to pay attention to the things that make you unhappy at work. Because then you can reflect on, this makes me unhappy, where I fall in that control continuum. It's out of my control. There's some semi-control. Or, hey, guess what? I've just surrendered my control all out and didn't think twice about it, to see how maybe you can come up with a proactive solution to address the things that really cause you anxiety, depression, whatever the case may be. Practice self-awareness, which means you always have your EI out, right? Key thing, most people don't really practice self-awareness. Be aware of how you immerse yourself in the world around you and how that world around you makes you feel. And maybe you need to change your environment if it's not healthy. And that can be hard, because that might entail some friends, some families, things like that. If a workplace is unhealthy, think about, can I make moves to get out of here so I can be in a better space? It's always making a strategy, an exit plan based on being aware of what needs to change. 2, embrace imperfection. We live in a world that will tell you it's okay to be imperfect, but the world shows you and forces upon you perfection. You are perfect for who you are. You define what works for you. You define the best version of you. Should not be what your significant other wants. It shouldn't be what your children think. It should not be what your boss wants. It's what's going to be the thing that resonates with you, that makes you happy. So embrace whatever you have a deficiency at, as long as it's not debilitating. It's okay if you're not maybe the greatest public speaker. It's okay that maybe, you don't always have, the first answer, but you come up with a good answer. It's okay. No one in this world is made perfect. And hence, you should never feel that way. And if you are feeling imperfect, the question is, why do you feel that way? And why do you feel the need to be perfect? Pull back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage. And if you are just actually hell-bent on perfection, I would ask you, does that come from you, or did you pick that up from someone else? Now, that means you can go all the way back to the earlier episodes of M.A.Y.A. We talked about our attachment styles and where our personalities originate from. Because maybe something that you're harboring at the core of it is not really you. That's about self-awareness. 3, I've mastered this. Learn to laugh at yourself. The reason I put that big is because most people just absolutely, they make a mistake, they do something wrong, and they cringe and they recoil. I had a stretch of a couple years where I was doing the dumbest crap you could ever do. And the thing is, every time I would do it, I'd be like, that was so dumb. And I would laugh at it. Like, but you know what? I've been so focused my whole life on not necessarily being perfect, but always trying to be, no, I'm not gonna lie. I was spending a lot of my life trying to be perfect and really was my worst critic when I made mistakes. I learned to laugh at myself. And the minute I learned to laugh at myself, things got a lot better because I stopped taking everything so serious. Here's one that's even bigger than that. Forgive others. If someone hurts your feelings, takes you for granted, whatever the case may be, part of moving forward is not trying to find the source of their behavior or their actions. Just say, I forgive them for that, and move on. And forgiving people is really hard, especially if a part of you really needs an answer for why you feel like you were treated the way you were treated. Sometimes that's part of closure. And you might be able to get closure with some people, and you may not. And they may tell you something that you totally didn't expect. And if you can't forgive people, the problem is you tend to carry that, and now you throw that into your bag of the unforgiveness bag. And after a while, the unforgiveness bag, it gets real heavy. But what's more important than forgiving others is forgiving yourself. You don't always have to make the right decision. You don't always have to be happy. You don't always have to be somebody's saving grace. You don't always have to have the answer. It's okay. Forgive yourself when you don't always hit on all cylinders. Because part of not always doing things right is it gives you a learning curve to figure out where you can be better. Remember, I told you it's a whole nother episode about how to turn failure into something that can become advantageous to you. Hi, James O'Bannon. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people struggle with this, being able to forgive themselves. It's like they rather get forgiveness from someone else. Like, it's like you're absolved. I mean, when I was a practicing Catholic growing up, I used to hate going to confession. I used to be like, why do I have to sit here and tell this man, which I already told you I wasn't cut out really good for religion, about what I did? I was sitting there every time and say the same thing. So he could tell me, the priest, how many Hail Marys or whatever to do on the rosary. And I would sit there and go through the motions. At that point, I had already decided that whatever the higher being was that was overseeing the world and my behavior, they've already known what I've done. The question is, was I legitimately sorry for it? Because that's where forgiveness comes from. Like, I'm sorry that I did that. That was awful. And you may apologize to somebody when you know you've done something wrong. And if they don't accept that, that's okay too. You've done the best you can do. If they don't want to give you their forgiveness, please do not let that be the thing that keeps you from moving forward and staying stagnant and feeling guilty or shameful. Because it's no one's given right to make you feel guilty or shameful unless what you did was so egregious, it's going to take more than an apology. And I can't, that's when you sit down with your therapist and you talk about that. That's a little bit above the mental wellness advocate, pay grade, so to speak, which is free. So forgiving others and yourself is key. This is another one that people really, 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 I need for people to get this. Start saying no, and don't say no just to say no. Know the difference between being selfless and selfish. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. So if you don't have time to do something, stop taking on additional responsibilities if you don't have time to do it. If you feel like someone's taking you for granted, whether it's your time, your effort, wherever it is, then just say no. One, you'll probably take them by surprise. And then if they ask, well, why not? You can proceed to tell them why. And you shouldn't have to feel guilty for why that is. So just know you are not at any point of time obligated to do a lot of things that people feel they have to do. It's okay to say no. Unless you're just being mean and spiteful, then that's not healthy, because now that means you're not working to the best version of yourself. But if saying no is helping you to reclaim some of that power we talked about 2 episodes back, then reclaim it and don't feel guilty for reclaiming it. Know why you are saying no, the explanation behind it, so that it makes sense to you. And if you need to explain to somebody else, it makes sense to them too. Never stop educating yourself. Leave your comfort zone. I cannot tell you how important that really is. We had a show about comfort zones that, you know what, they're great. We love them. But at some point you have to learn to step outside of them to grow. Because why people often feel stuck and stagnant is because they get comfortable And then they never challenge themselves, which means you never really get to your real potential. So never stop educating yourself about different things. Step out your comfort zone. Do something you never thought you would do, as long as it's not dangerous. I'm not saying like go off and do something that's dangerous or doesn't make sense. If it piques your interest, but yet you don't feel like you know it, then take small steps to do it. Like for me, like I really wanted to get better at investing. Besides the fact that I have a 401k, I'm like, I really wanted to start doing more trading. So I stepped out my comfort zone while allowing somebody else to do things for me, and I started to educate myself. And now I feel more empowered and more confident in the choices that I'm making in regards to I was starting to expand my knowledge base. So never stop educating yourself. If you ever feel like you got to the point where you know everything, that's a dangerous place to be. And most people don't realize that nobody, and I mean nobody, knows everything. But I'll tell you what's key. You know what you know, and you can have full ownership of that. And that's a healthy place to be. But never feel like you have the answer, especially somebody else's situation. Don't feel like you always have the answer. Another point, and this is focus inward, not outward. That's what my ambition, your ambition is all about, is that at the core of this, the answers are in you. The questions might be outside of you, but the answers are inside of you. And your focus should always be, when I'm working on the best version of me, it's not what I think my significant other wants. It's not what my parents think or my family, my friends, my kids, my job. No. You embrace you for who you are, and you project that best version of yourself. And if it's good, and you are really living beyond your dreams because you've taken your dreams and made them reality, and your dreams don't have to be lofty and they shouldn't be somebody else's, that's when you will be productive, happier, and confident, because the source that you are drawing from is you, and the answers aren't coming for other people. We tell people in therapy all the time, at least I do. I'm not here to give you answers. I am merely here to be a tool to help you to change what you're looking to change. By the way, you will be doing all the heavy lifting while you're in session, but I will make sure your form is good. And a lot of people think that as a therapist, you're supposed to sit there and either give them the answer or agree with whatever they say. That's going into therapy wrong, because that's not what it's about. So focus inward and not outward. Be grateful and practice it every day. Daily reflections on happiness. End your day with reflecting on what was a success, what made you happy. You know, some people like, it was just an everyday thing, nothing. Okay, well then just be grateful for waking up, being grateful being able to go to a job, be grateful maybe you were able to help someone, maybe you made somebody smile. It's the small things that build into being the best version of you. And sometimes when you take the simple things for granted, so we live in a society where everything is bigger and better. I need you to dial this down and focus on the simple and the small things, because that's what gives you a foundation to be the best version of you. Reflect daily on your happiness. Was today a good day? Yes, because you know what? It went without a hitch. I just felt good. My energy was great. Nothing really kind of crazy happened. Oh, thank you. Or was it a compromising or challenging day? Like, oh, today just absolutely sucked, the big one, because this, and this. And then that's when you say, let me do a really quick inventory of what in that was my responsibility. What could I have changed? What could I have controlled? And then move forward. And then, you know, moving into tomorrow, you know what? That person was really gossipy, or this happened. I'm not letting that happen today. I'm not doing it. I'm not rolling with that. I'm not dropping what you're picking up. That's key. Be consistent in your habits, your actions, and your words. One of the things that we all notice is when people are inconsistent in how they deal with this. They're this way one way, they're that way another time. And you know what? That's sometimes which puts you on your emotional fence, because you're not exactly sure who you're dealing with. Well, here's the thing. When people are inconsistent, or if you're inconsistent, it does create issues, especially if the inconsistency is good and bad. So be consistent in your habits, your actions, and your words. And people notice when you are consistent, like, look, that's Maya. This is what Maya will do. And that's when you're out of sorts and not being yourself, someone can be like, hey, are you okay? Because you'll know that you're not being the person that would do a certain thing or would behave a certain way or would even talk a certain way. They know when you're different. That's what being consistent gives you. Consistency gives people a way of understanding who you are. And 10, be yourself. Never fake it. I always tell people, toss out that window, the saying, fake it till you make it. Be present in the moment and who you are. Make that everyday version of yourself that best version. And if there's some things that you want to work on, we talked about 10 things, this being the 10th, that you can say, this is what I'm struggling with. I fix this and I'll be so much happier. I'll be so much more productive. But trying to be what somebody else thinks you should be is always going to be an issue for you. because there's never going to be productivity and truly happiness. You're always going to be a seeker of someone else's dreams or someone else's expectations. Hence, you're always compromising getting to that best version of you. So 10 things that you can do. Remember, go to MAYAKai.com, go to the podcast resource section, and then you can always check out the article by Keeping It Mindful by Kim and kind of read in depth more of some of the things that she'd say. So my final thought is this simple. It's a simple little meme that I picked up. I like to post memes all the time without going overboard. We are not perfect human beings, nor do we have to pretend to be. But it's necessary for us to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And it's just that simple. Be unapologetically, one of the most probably overused phrases ever. Be unapologetically you. Whoever that is in that moment, it's okay. Embrace it, love it, grow it, change it. You are the architect of not just your future, but of your everyday. And I want people to start being present in their everyday thoughts, actions, and words. And I'm telling you something, you will see a shift when you are accountable for you and you're living to be the person, which goes back to core values, by the way, that's somewhere back in one of those episodes, that drives you. And that's it. I want your best version of you to be an everyday exercise, people, not a long-term goal. Every day, how were you good and how could you be better? All right, that's it for episode 27. Like I said, it came from a personal place for me, but I felt like I could share some things with people. So let's go ahead and let's shift gears. This is where we bring on Miriam, and I'm excited because we're going to actually sit here and over her new single, Heart of Gold. You know what? I had to put that back up again because I just love it, and it's super, it's super sexy. But the song is fantastic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Miriam on. Hello.
Hey.
All right. So let's talk about this project a bit. How long did it take you to get to writing this single or this whole project?
Oh my gosh. It was a process. It's been, I'll say it's been a rough past 2 years, and I had an initial concept completely different from the one that um, Heart of Gold, and I just didn't feel right, and I kept trying to go with it, but I was like, "That's just not who I am right now." They were good songs, but they were songs I had written before, and it just didn't feel like it reflected who I am at the moment, and so then I just started writing more songs, and they felt right, and they felt like they reflected me right now, and I was really excited about them. And I've always wanted to do an EP because I've only released, like, a few singles and not as much as I should be or should've, but I'm finally ready to do it, and so I have an EP coming out on Monday, and I'm so excited about it, and Heart of Gold just came out, and I'm just the love and the response from it is insane, and I'm so happy about it.
See, what you just said to me feels like I know that we're debuting your song, but it just fits right into you talking about the best version of you. Like you're like, I had written
Exactly.
material, but now I've grown and I've changed, and it's
Yeah.
that's being present. You like, I wanted to put out something that I felt resonated with me right now.
Yeah, exactly, and it's every song that I write is a different version of me, and they're not all the same, and even now I'm writing more music, and it's a more developed version of me, and it's a little different than the EP that I'm releasing now. It's just because I'm still growing every single day, and I was like, "I need to put this music out before I grow past it," you know? And it's not that it's not good music, it's just especially as a songwriter, I have a hard time not moving past songs, especially when I write a new one. I'm like, "Oh, this is better than the last one, so I'm done with that song." So it's just having patience with myself to
So,
be like, "Hey, it's okay."
what is Heart of Gold about? What's the single about?
Heart of Gold is I just had an idea of, first of all, I'm a feminist. I'm a big advocate for women and women being who they are without repercussion from society and or men telling them that they're doing something wrong. And so I just kind of envisioned like a girl who's like a working girl, like a stripper, and um and just I just envisioned it, and I was like, what would I write? And so I wrote Heart of Gold, because it's not about something that she does as a job, or even if she enjoys being a stripper, all of the above. That's her business. And it doesn't mean she's not a good person. It doesn't mean that she's like a whore or a slut. It doesn't mean any of those things. Like part of the song I say, she's not a daughter, she's a person, because I've heard that so many times, like, "Oh, don't treat women poorly, like, if you're treating her poorly, just think, like, she's a daughter of somebody." No, she's a person. It doesn't matter if she's a daughter of somebody, she's a person, so treat her correctly. And so I really wanted to get my point across, and I think I did, so
Okay. Well, hey, let's
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah,
Let's go ahead and check it out. All right. Single, we
right.
said it's actually releasing on Monday, right?
Yes, the whole EP, the rest, it's a 5-song EP, so the other 4 songs will release on Monday.
All right. So this is obviously the
Yeah.
first of the 5.
Yes.
Okay, everybody. This
Mhm.
is Heart of Gold.
I know you gave me everything, but give me more. You think that's good enough, you selfish little. Just make it look easy. You spin in circles like a naked carousel. Just wind him up and make it something you could sell. These men are so easy. She's dressed in glitter with a heart of gold. Watch her silver tongue cut through the bullshit he spoke. On the stage where she dances in front of her friends, there's George Benjamin and 2 months rent. She ain't a whore, she's just working, and what she's making, she deserves it. She ain't a daughter, she's a person, feeling so alive. She out here stroking all your egos with painted fingers and stilettos. And where she's going, only she knows, but she gon' be just fine. Heart of gold. Heart of gold. I heard you tell him no, he don't listen very well. No, you're not asking for it, he can go to hell. But no one believes us when we say somebody took it way too far. He ripped your shirt and threw you up against the car. These men are so greedy. She's dressed in glitter with a heart of gold. Watch her silver tongue cut through the bullshit he spoke. On the stage where she dances in front of her friends, there's George Benjamin and 2 months rent. She ain't a whore, she's just working, and what she's making, she deserves it. She ain't a daughter, she's a person, feeling so alive. She out here stroking all your egos with painted fingers and stilettos. And where she's going, only she knows, but she gon' be just fine.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You said it before, but listening to the song, it resonated more. And you know what? That is a cop out to say to somebody about, why would you treat her that way? I mean, like, how would, like, that's somebody's daughter. Or imagine if someone treated your daughter like that. When you said that, it made me think about, that's such a lack of empathy and compassion that somebody has to connect the experience to you for you to know that what you did was wrong.
Yeah. Just for them to see it.
Just for them to see it.
It's laughable, honestly. And I've heard that so many times from different people. So I was like, you know what? I'm tired of it.
You're right, but to have to continue to contextualize things for people to understand right and wrong is really sad. It's really sad to know that you shouldn't treat a person like that. And it shouldn't have to go beyond that conversation. Well, I am excited to hear the remaining of the EP, which comes out Monday. So everybody make sure, as we always say, that you follow Miriam on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. It's MiriamMcQueen.com. See, she made life easy for you.
Yes.
It's this handle. It's that handle. No, it's just MiriamMcQueen.com. So I can't wait. I'm trying to talk her into doing a listening party. So, we're going to work on that.
Yes, we're working on that now.
All right, good stuff. All right. Well, I'm excited about this. And until next week, you have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. That is Miriam McQueen. She is the My Musical Muse. And that was her new single she just released. And the EP is coming out next Monday with 4 additional songs. So go check out her stuff. It's really good stuff. Not just someone who does covers. She writes her own original music. That was a really good song because, again, an experience of a person I never really thought about. And I think the way she put it in context is very real. That a lot of people only see the outside and assume that that makes you exactly who you are. And this is why, when I said in this last episode, focus on the inside and let that radiate out. That's the key thing. So once again, she's managed to make the song work and we didn't even know that was going to be the case. All right, everybody, make sure that you listen to episodes of M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A.com. And of course, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is M.A.Y.A. It's pretty straightforward. You can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and I'm also now on Amazon Audibles. So there's always different ways that you can connect with the show. So as I always end my show with saying, remember, live every day to the fullest because your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So don't think about what's not happening and not being in the present, because the present can be something that can make your future entirely different. All right, everybody, that's it for me. I will catch you next Thursday. And thank you for tuning in to M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. All right, ciao.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking, thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A Akai.com.